here's the kicker. Unless Trump can patch it up with Musk, this is plausible. But everybody who's saying Trump and Musk will make up today, for Trump to make up with Musk, he's got to sacrifice the big, beautiful bill. Would he do that? Would he really sacrifice that bill for Musk? And another very astute political commentator said, the thing you got to remember about Trump is he never forgets. He never forgets when he thinks he's been slighted.
Hi, I'm Maddie, Hale, and welcome to the Trump Report. Today we've had Scott Lucas on the show. He's a professor of American and International Studies at the Clinton Institute at the Dublin University. We really get into this war of words between Donald Trump and Elon Musk, this breakup, this bromance no longer. We go through all the tweets, all the fighting, even the press conference where Donald Trump said he's disappointed in Elon Musk. We don't know if they're going to be friends again. They're reportedly going to speak today and try and potentially salvage this. We don't know. So Scott and I just really dissect what has happened between these two, whether this bill will even go forward, this big, beautiful bill, after Elon Musk has called it an abomination. Republicans are not jumping on board with it as well. So all that today on the Trump Report. You can watch us every day, Monday through Friday on Times Radio's YouTube, or you can stream us as a podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. Scott Lucas, a professor of American Studies at the Clinton Institute at Dublin University. Thank you so much for joining the Trump Report today.
Oh man, how could I turn down this opportunity after what happened last night?
I don't even know how to start. I just want your reaction. I just want your straight away. Donald Trump and Elon Musk, they've had this fallout, this bit of feud played out to us over social media in the last 12, 24 hours, not even. Scott, have we been waiting for this?
What, you mean two thin-skinned narcissists walk into a bar and have a punch-up? Am I shocked? No, yeah, I'm not. But I was shocked that it happened so quickly last night. I mean, this was befitting, the fact that both of them, well, Trump's a reality TV star. This was like car crash in real time. So I got back. I had a lovely dinner, tapas, bit of ice cream afterwards. I get back and I flip on Trump's press conference. And then as soon as I realized that with the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, who's there to talk about other topics, important topics, just sitting there looking a bit bemused, Trump is just ragging on Musk over having Trump derangement syndrome. I immediately brought up Musk Twitter line. I refuse to call it X. They brought up his Twitter line. And of course, Musk is on his Twitter line just firing stuff back, right? About, Trump's atrocious bill, for all the tax cuts, the spending cuts, how all his advisors are horrible. And then it's just spiraling out of control, where, Trump's saying, I'm going to cancel billions of dollars of your contracts for SpaceX and Tesla. And Musk is saying, well, all right, then you can't have my Dragon flights to go to the International Space Station. And of course, everybody else on social media, or at least the dumpster fire called X, is piling on as well. So you've got all these hard right activists who are picking sides in real time, throwing in their insults. And you've even got American legislators, representatives, and a couple of senators who are piling in. And it's like watching the implosion, not just of this not so beautiful relationship between Donald and Elon, it's watching the further implosion of the Republican Party, which will take us into the real significance of this. Because, it's great to munch popcorn and watch these two guys tear strips off of each other, um, you know, in reproducing what Trump used to do in the World Wrestling Federation. But the question of what it means for America's economy, what it means for social programs, and what it means for us in the UK or in Ireland, that's where the serious rubber hits the road. And we can talk about that in the next few minutes.
Yeah, well, Scott, we've got so much to get into, and we're really using this this episode to dive into the fact that the Trump Report is now a podcast, because this will be a very podcasty episode, because this has just played out in real time in front of an audience. I mean, What did a political junkie do before there was social media, Scott? Because we are so lucky to see politicians fighting on social media, or whatever you want to call Elon Musk, a businessman, a co-president. But for the viewers and listeners who are kind of confused as to what the timeline was, I'll play it out for them, because what we saw was Elon Musk and Donald Trump earlier in the week. They had a press conference where they were trying to prove that they were still friends, because basically Elon Musk finished his 130-day temporary stint at the White House. There was speculation whether there had been a fallout, but they were saying, no, there's been no fallout. He's a temporary employee, not that he was, even being paid to, head up DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, but the time was over. It was time for Elon Musk to go back to his many businesses that he needed to address. Of course, we saw Tesla stocks plummeting. We knew that he had stuff to do. But then Musk comes out in the last few days and slams Trump's big, beautiful tax cut and spending bill. He calls it an abomination. He's spent the last 130 days with the role of trying to reduce the deficit, with the role of trying to reduce spending. And his interpretation is that the president with his bill has basically undone all the work that he's been doing. So from then on, it escalates to a war of words. Trump, in that press conference that you mentioned, says that he's disappointed in Elon Musk, but he said that Elon Musk has only changed his tune because Trump took away the electric vehicle tax credits, which of course we know is probably false, because Elon Musk has really never come out and said that there was an issue there. We already knew that was going to happen. And Musk's whole thing is that Trump and the Republicans' sweeping tax and spending cuts package will add $2.4 trillion to the deficit. This was backed up by the Congressional Budget Office's analysis this week. So Elon Musk, he responds to Trump's comments saying, Trump releases a statement. Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted. And he knew that for months that I was going to do that. And he just went crazy. Elon Musk responds on X saying, that is such an obvious lie. So sad. So Scott, what's your interpretation? Do you think that Elon Musk has been told to leave the way that Trump says he did?
Let's deep dive this, because there's a wider context and so on. Let's roll it back to last week when Musk contract ended, as you mentioned. What had happened already is that Musk had fouled the nest, not necessarily with Trump, but with key people in the Trump administration. So as he's leading the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, which actually cuts very little in government spending, perhaps a few $1 billion, to be honest with you. He is charging into various departments, and we know that he had been taking information. We know that he'd been trying to get his people inside these departments. We know that he had been demanding the firing of staff from these departments, and he succeeded with a lot of that, but he was getting pushback from some others. So, for example, he got into a knockdown, drag-out fight on social media with Peter Navarro. Now, Peter Navarro is the real warrior protectionist, the economic isolationist who wants really, really high tariffs, and he wants to block high-tech workers from coming into the United States on visas. That turned into a slanging match with Musk using terms I can't use here about Navarro. Now, Musk won the battle over the visas for high-tech workers, but he may have lost the war with Navarro, who is going to undercut him. More importantly, Musk got into a stand-up argument with the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, while the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, was in the White House. And they're screaming, and people are telling them to quiet it down. Bessent didn't like Musk interfering on issues like China. He didn't like his interference on other issues regarding Treasury policy. And he told Musk that. And Bessent is like the really key adult in the room right now in the Trump administration on a number of issues. So Musk was going to go, not just because the contract ended, but because others in the White House wanted him out. Okay? Now, here's what's hinky, though, about what happens next, Maddie. When Elon had his farewell press conference with Musk in the White House and everybody played nice, while people are thinking, why does Elon have the black eye? Musk had already recorded that interview with CBS News that aired last Sunday, where he criticized the big, beautiful bill. So he was already opposing the bill, but everybody was still playing nice there, right? Similarly, Trump's argument, as you pointed out, that Musk really got upset because the big, beautiful bill in subsidies for EVs doesn't hold up, electric vehicles doesn't hold up, because we knew that at the end of March. Trump had told Musk that at the end of March, and Musk had accepted it.
And Trump bought a Tesla.
Yeah, they had the White House photo opportunity where Trump says, "Oh, I don't actually drive, but look here I am with Elon next to me," and they're like making out in the front seat of this damn Tesla, and so it's like, okay, so the bros are back together again. I I think you can actually get to the heart of this with what happened on Tuesday. Musk was retweeting people that were criticizing the Trump bill, for not cutting spending enough. Now, there are a number of House representatives who almost held the bill up for that. But importantly, there's a couple of senators who've been very loud about this. There's a guy named Mike Lee of Utah, who's a big supporter of Musk, and Rand Paul, the libertarian from Kentucky. Musk came out, and I'll repeat the quote that you gave a moment ago. This is a massive pork-filled abomination. And he wasn't referring just to Donald Trump's waistline. He was referring to those tax and spending measures and effectively saying, you cannot afford these tax cuts. You've got to cut further spending, because Musk says, I looked and the US is paying more in interest on the federal debt every 100 days than the entire budget for the US military, which actually is true, right? So Musk actually had a valid economic point, but he's made it personal with Trump and with the Trump camp on Tuesday. A reporter on Thursday, press conference with Trump sitting next to the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, trying to look important, trying to look statesmanlike, trying to look like he's controlling the room. A reporter baits Trump and says, what about Elon Musk? What about this that he's saying about you? And that's like a red rag to a narcissist bull. He's just, and you just gave a couple of quotes. Trump is just off talking about how disappointed he is. But then that whole thing of, there are other people who leave this White House. There are other people who leave. Some of them, they're okay. They remain on good terms. But others, Trump derangement syndrome. And I'm convinced that's what sent Musk off, because Musk does not want to have that same label that he's used against Trump's foes against him. And then it just degenerates from there.
He says in this press conference that he thinks Elon Musk misses the White House. Some of them embrace it and some of them become hostile. Trump derangement syndrome. So my interpretation is that Elon Musk really liked being a part of the cool club. He really liked being a part of the White House. It was a bit of a boys' club. They were having a lot of fun. They were doing all this business together. He was friends with the most popular kid in school, which is Donald Trump. And anyone that follows Donald Trump knows that he can just flip on a dime. So that's what we've all been waiting for.
Yeah, but again, I think that's like the easy. It's a good read, but I think you got to go further, Maddie, on this, right? I think we could add the fact that it's not just Trump versus Elon here. Those Trump advisors are key. For example, there's a big story here which plays into this, where Elon nominated got one of his friends as the nominee to head up NASA, the space administration, which is all part of the conflict of interest, that SpaceX was going to get all these contracts from NASA, et cetera. And then someone within the Trump administration blocked the nomination. And we're not quite sure who, right? But this guy was tossed out. They put in another person to head up NASA. And Elon's not happy about that, right? But I also think it goes beyond it, in that, to riff off of your point, richest man in the world wanted the political power. He liked destroying the government. He liked remaking it, not as Donald Trump's government, but as Elon Musk government. And that sets up the collision, not just between him and Trump, but between Elon Musk and Project 2025. And now I need to explain the background to this. Project 2025, as we all should know by now, is the blueprint for Trump 2.0, which is why it's very different from 1.0, which is we go in, we hack up the agencies, we put Trump loyalists in there, they serve the president, they don't serve anybody else, and we effectively consolidate power. We push aside the judiciary, we push aside Congress. Now, Elon Musk was a vehicle for that. He was a tool for that. Remember the chainsaw? So the Trump people and Project 2025 are using Elon to do their dirty work to go in with all the agencies because he's a special government employee. But Elon doesn't want to just be a vehicle. Like you said, Elon wants to be there on the front row of power. And it was getting to the point where he's being pushed to the side.
Well, do we think that's because two egos cannot be running the show?
It's not just two egos. It's Elon Musk versus all those other people that are in Washington. I mean, you talk to people in Washington, Maddie. You know what it's like. You know what it's like from being down in Australia. You know what it's like in the UK. When you get into a center of power, in this case, you talk about Washington. You've got people that are networking, that are lobbying. They all want to be seen as being important and being relevant. And Musk is charging around going against them. So there are legislators who want to think, I'm important. I'm not just here just to serve Elon Musk. He needs to talk nice to me. More importantly, remember an incident early on, that was a tap on the wrist, but it was significant. Trump is in a cabinet meeting and Elon's there. And remember that there are cabinet people who complain that Elon's getting into their agencies. And he's the one that is sending out the emails saying, you need to reply by this date or else you're going to be sacked, et cetera. And they said, we get to choose that. He doesn't get to do that. And Trump supposedly reprimanded Musk and said, no, it's the cabinet secretaries who rule. The serious point here was there's still lines of authority. Musk didn't recognize that. He was sitting there with his band of merry 18 to 26-year-olds charging into every agency. Now, if the Trump people didn't like the agency he was charging into, like the U.S. Agency for International Development, parts of the State Department, parts of the Treasury, yeah, then Elon could get away with it. But when he starts to go after the Pentagon, when he starts to go after high-level Treasury folks, cabinet secretaries start to say, no, I back off. And you just saw the culmination of it, because I'll throw one other issue here where it became very important. The whole tariffs fiasco. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has become very important on the tariffs fiasco because he has to manage Trump and pull him back from 50, 60, 70, 80%, whatever number Donald decides on a Friday to put up as the tariff level. Now, in particular, Bessent has got a lot of influence in trying to pull back from the trade war with China, right? Elon went in agency across agency and has been trying to get himself involved in policymaking on China. In part, that's because where does 1/3 of Tesla's components come from? China. Bessent didn't like that. He said Musk had no right to be talking about tariff and trade policy regarding China. Get out of my room. And that's when they had that stand-up fight. And more importantly, Maddie, remember, someone made sure that we knew about that fight. There were officials who wanted to pin this on Musk by leaking it to the press.
But then we've had Elon Musk on one of his Twitter rants that we've seen, and we've got so many here just for the audience. There was so much that happened online last night. But one of the big ones was someone tweets last night, "Can I finally say that Trump's tariffs are super stupid?" Elon Musk retweets that. The Trump tariffs will cause a recession in the second half of this year, which is exactly what many economists have said. But for Trump's main man to come out, who's never commented on the tariffs in a bad fashion, to come out now and say, I'm just going to drop this truth bomb here, these tariffs will cause a recession. This is damaging for Donald Trump's economic policies and his economic reputation, Scott.
Well, I mean, Trump didn't have an economic reputation. We know that, or at
Well,
least
he
the rest.
thinks he did. He got nominated because he says he can handle the economy.
Well, look, you remember I'm the one that's called Trump an economic moron on a series of your video casts not backing off. Trump has economic illusions. Let's put this right, okay? And I think you're getting to the heart of this, Maddie. You've got the illusion of the big beautiful bill that we talked about, which in fact doesn't cut government spending; it increases it by 2.4 trillion. So it's not fiscally responsible, right? Now that's what Trump didn't get elected for that. Trump did not get elected to go in and jack up the federal government's deficit. Then you got the illusion of the tariffs, which are going to cause damage to manufacturing, to farmers, to consumers, cause damage to America's financial standing, including in the bond markets. Elon called that out. He called out the illusion of this, that the tariffs are. Now, I think Elon's motives here again go back to the fact it's going to hurt his companies with the tariffs, if the tariffs come in fully. But the fact is, he's pulled the curtain back on Donald, the wizard of the White House, right? And we realize that Donald ain't wearing no pants. There is nothing there.
I want to get into that pulling the cover up because that is an interesting point, Scott, because we'll move off the bill at some point, but it's interesting because a lot of this is obviously stemmed from the fact that Elon Musk does not agree with the fact that Donald Trump has introduced this bill now. As it stands, the House have passed this, but the Senate still needs to pass it. So what happened overnight, which was really interesting, and it couples with something that Marjorie Taylor Greene posted on X, is that Donald Trump said this. He said, "I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody. He had no problem with it." Elon then responds and said he was never shown Trump's bill and that members of Congress weren't shown it until late the night before they had to vote on it. And they had no time to read it, which was coupled with the fact that before this was, he was accused of doing this. Marjorie Taylor Greene said on X that she'd missed the section in the bill that strips states of the right to make laws or regulate AI for 10 years. She came out on X and said, I oppose this and it is a violation of state rights. I would have voted no if I'd known that it was in there. She got rinsed online for not having read the bill correctly, but this is what happened. So clearly Donald Trump didn't give his congressional House members the bill until late the night before.
Well, let's again go with a bit of wider context on this. I mean, not to be a full defender of Trump, but again, and you'll know this from coverage, right? A bill goes through a whole series of stages as it's developed. It gets amended and so on. This is an 1,116 page bill. Now, Marjorie don't read too much unless it's conspiracy theory. But for other legislators, they would have seen earlier versions of the bill when it went through. It wouldn't like they get 1,100 pages, which land on the desk just the night before, right? But the final bill, with the final amendments that have come into it, does land late, right? So, that's a huge task that it's not just the legislator. You're getting your staff to try to read the bill, try to go through and pick out everything and so on. Marjorie simply just makes a statement, which was a bit silly of herself, saying, well, I don't really read anything, and like gets called out. I think the standpoint here is not how late the bill arrived, et cetera. It comes down to a fight over some measures in it. And let me preface this by saying it's not that the Senate has to pass this bill. It's actually a bit more serious for the administration than this. The Senate has said it's not going to vote on this bill. What the Senate is doing is drawing up its own version of the bill, and then you have to try to reconcile them. Now, where's the fundamental dispute here? The House bill, while it cuts spending, it does not cut enough spending to balance the books because the tax cuts are so big, right? Now, that means that you jack up the federal government debt, which is already $36 trillion. Now, to do that, you have to lift the debt ceiling. There's a congressional mandate that says you can't, it's like maxing, you can't go beyond this max limit on your credit card. And Congress is being asked to raise the limit on the credit card to keep on spending and spending and spending. So for those who are really hard line, what you might call economic conservatives, they do not want to raise the debt ceiling. And they want to balance this. Now, the only way you can balance this, unless you're going to roll back on the tax cuts, is you got to cut somewhere. Now, they've already cut Medicare and Medicaid by about 850 billion. And that used to be a sacred cow that you never touch that. They've wiped out other social programs. Where are they going to cut? Now, they haven't answered that question, but that's why they held out. That's why this group has held out against the bill when it went through the House. And that's why some senators are against it. And Musk is siding with them.
Well, I want to get into that, Scott, because we've got these Republicans, these senators. We've got Rand Paul, we've got Rick Scott, Mike Lee, and Ron Johnson, and of course Marjorie Taylor Greene's a congresswoman. But these four male Republican senators so far seem to be against it. Now, this is cracks within the Republican Party. This is division over their biggest bill since he was inaugurated.
Yeah, Republicans got a 53-47 majority in the Senate. Democrats are not going to support this bill, not with the spending cuts that are involved there. So you can only afford to lose 3 Republicans and then have JD break the tie as the presiding officer. Now, Rand Paul, as a staunch libertarian, he's always been an outlier. He's not really a Republican as much as someone within the party, but he's always someone who has said, you cannot keep raising spending. Mike Lee, we talked about from Utah, he's close to Musk, right? Musk retweets him every day. So I think that's a hard call. And then you mentioned Ron Johnson, who is also a hardline fiscal conservative as well. And I forget the fourth name you put up there. Oh, Rick Scott from Florida, who's politically very, very ambitious, right? And he's looking where he can make his moves. But I think there'll be more Republicans who may come out against the bill as well, because Musk is going to be lobbying them, right?
Well, let's get into that, Scott. Let's get into this lobbying and how this might affect the midterm. So you and I spoke off camera about an interesting situation that we saw how Elon Musk's influence and how influential he was when it came to the 2024 presidential election, not just monetarily, but he has a lot of following. He's a big name. He's a very famous person. People were interested in how he wanted to vote, and then we saw him go to various other elections and put his stance on it, whether it was met with welcome or with not. But the midterms will come around quicker than we think. They're going to be they're next November. So people start campaigning, however, they'll start soon. They'll always be, you're never not campaigning when you're. So I wonder, will Elon Musk start funding campaigns of opponents to the Republican Party or people who are against Donald Trump and go out and kind of barrack for them? Because there's Lindsey Graham, Tom Cotton, 2 Republican senators, they're up for re-election. No. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think he's going to try and use his influence again as retaliation against Donald Trump?
Yes. Let's walk through how it plays out. First of all, let's just knock one thing on the head. A couple of Musk associates went to the press last night and said, you know what, Elon could join the Democrats. That's how serious they were going to try to play this. Now, Musk is poison for the Democrats. And I think, except for Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, who's all over the shop, the Democratic senator, I think everybody knows that. So I don't think Musk is going to be welcomed into the Democratic fold. But you absolutely you peg this, because when Donald Trump took control of the Republican Party, even when he was out of office and in opposition, he did it by threatening to primary incumbent legislators, right? You don't do what I want to do, I run someone against you, and I fund them. And he's been very effective at that, those bully boy tactics. Now, Musk could try out and try to do the same thing. Already, the Musk people have let it be known that he had pledged $100 million to support Trump and the Trumpists in the elections, for campaigning for the elections. That's gone. That $100 million is not going to go to them, right? So who does he start to send that money to? There will be incumbent senators and legislators who may want a piece of it, which means they may have to come out in opposition to Trump, as we've been discussing. But there may be those who are quite ambitious who say, I want a piece of that, right? Remember a guy named Ron DeSantis? Well, he's back. Ron, after one of the worst presidential campaigns in history, where he should have gotten the Republican nomination and threw it away, and who's been absolutely fouling his nest in Florida. But as soon as this all broke last night, he put out a statement which talked about the need for fiscal responsibility, the need to review the big, beautiful bill. So DeSantis setting up probably to think maybe I can run for president in 28, right? And so it's going to be like the vultures are going to circle around. Now, Donald Trump is not yet a carcass, but there's blood in the water, which is taking place here. And it comes back to the fact that the Republican Party, it ain't the Republican Party of your daddy or your granddaddy. It had been remade by Trump, which means you don't have the solid organizational structure to function as a party. You have factions within it. Now, how much can Musk play upon that? Early days. But I do think that unless Trump, here's the kicker, unless Trump can patch it up with Musk, this is plausible. But everybody who's saying Trump and Musk will make up today, for Trump to make up with Musk, he's got to sacrifice the big, beautiful bill. Would he do that? Would he really sacrifice that bill for Musk? And another very astute political commentator said, the thing you got to remember about Trump is he never forgets. He never forgets when he thinks he's been slighted. So any reconciliation with Elon would be tenuous at best.
Oh, well, Scott, I don't know how Trump's ever going to forget a tweet like this from Elon Musk. Without me, Trump would have lost the election. Dems would control the House and Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate. Such ingratitude. We know that Donald Trump has an ego and he knows that he won the election. He still thinks he won the 2020 election. So that is not a tweet that I think he could ever overlook, and we'll get into a bit later if we think this is salvageable. But I want to get your thoughts on, you've just spoken about this, but do you think that Elon Musk has enough influence to damage Donald Trump right now? Whether that means starting in-party fighting, whether it means fractured relationships within the Republican Party, or whether it means how Americans are perceiving Donald Trump. Does Elon Musk have the influence?
We don't know. There would have been days gone by when you thought this might have happened, and you would have said, no, there's no way that Elon Musk has got the institutional backing. There's no way he's got the organizational backing to be able to take on Trump, to be able to take on the Trumpists in Congress. Because in days gone by, you would have had all those forces in Washington that would have been lining up, that would have been setting up, which is like, we're going to draw this firewall against Musk. We're talking about the world of social media now. And the fact is that Elon Musk has one of the world's biggest social media platforms, much bigger than Donald Trump's Truth Social. And he can use that to great effect because there are politicians, there are Republican Party activists who say, well, if social media is going this way we're going to go as well. The right-wing media environment is a very, very diverse media environment. It's not just a Fox News. So you can't just watch Fox News. You have to watch Breitbart. You have to watch One American News. You have to watch News Nation. You have to watch other outlets that are almost just springing up in various corners of broadcasting that will take up positions on this. You have to watch the business community. Because remember what you just said, which was an interesting point, which is that Elon, of course, may be doing this for his own ego, but he's making certain economic points that certain parts of the business community think are quite right. That Trump is damaging on tariffs, that he is damaging on the budget. Do they swing and support Musk? Do they swing and support Trump, or do they sit on their hands? What I'd say is I can't predict which way it's going to go, Maddie. What I can predict to you is it reinforces what we already have: instability, unpredictability, and chaos. Because while you have these schoolboys, these jacked up schoolboys who are throwing punches at each other, there are serious issues that are going by the boards. Let me just give you one example that just struck me yesterday. So we went into last night. I was doing media all day yesterday on a completely different topic where Donald Trump had just decided, and his core of inner advisors like Stephen Miller, we're just going to ban entry to the United States from 12 countries. Just like that, right? Now, there's serious economic effects, serious political effects of doing that. Where's that issue today? Gone, right? We were talking just a few days ago about the effects of raising the steel tariffs to 50%, right? Where's that issue today? Gone. In other words, in this world of social media, while everyone's talking about who will prevail, Trump versus Elon, the really key issues that matter even more than that, to be honest with you, they get pushed off to the side. And I'll return to the centerpiece of that is, and that is you have a US government which is in danger of not being able to fund its government debt because people do not have faith in the bond market. This instability between Trump and Musk will only fuel that sense of, is America still a reliable place to park our money or a reliable place to park our political interest?
Well, you have the richest man in the world saying America will go bankrupt. It's hard not to take that seriously, but we need to get into a few of these comments from Elon Musk, because Donald Trump kept his commentary very much in the ballpark of he kicked him out of the White House, he's upset about EVs, he's disappointed in him, but Elon Musk was the one that really went at him, and I don't know how he can recover from this. But I mean, Scott, he literally agreed with with someone who commented on a post in X. Elon Musk said yes to when someone said, should Donald Trump be impeached and replaced with JD Vance? He said yes.
Yeah, that's a really important point that you've made, Maddie. But when I said at the top, when I'm talking about two thin-skinned narcissists going after each other, this is the way that it plays out, and that is that Elon, when he said, "I put you into office, you would have lost without me. I won Congress for you." That was because Trump had gone after him in the press conference and said, "Oh, Elon says he won Pennsylvania for me because he campaigned there. He didn't. I would have won Pennsylvania anyway." What you got are two guys who have got egos that are just rampant, who just take any slight dig as being a mortal wound or potentially mortal. And if you think about guys who have fronted up at each other in pubs, you know what I'm talking about. Now, let's compound that. Donald Trump stays up late at night. Donald Trump isn't someone who thinks through what he necessarily posts or says. He just goes off on it, right? Elon Musk takes ketamine. We're legally safe there because he says he takes ketamine. How much he takes, that's a point for debate. Elon Musk stays up through the night quite often on social media. And indeed, I checked this morning to see what time he was tweeting at, and he was tweeting in the early hours of this morning. He only stopped for 2 or 3 hours. When you get two people like this, they don't step back. And what happens is they get frazzled. They get frazzled when they go off on this. They lose trains of thought, they lose coherence, and they reach for the insults. Even if you think they could make up with each other, that unpredictable behavior continues. I've talked to you in the past on videocast, Maddie, and I've said that the one check on the Trump administration is the adults in the room, right? It's the adults in the room around Trump. Keep referring to the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent as an example, that they have to repair the damage that Trump causes and they pull everybody back. When you're on social media or when you're in a White House press conference unfiltered, there are no adults in the room to hold you back. And that's the difference in the politics today versus where we would have been even a decade ago, right?
But right now Elon Musk knows that he wants to pull the public into this feud. He wants people to take sides. This is his agenda when it comes to taking to X to be calling out his former best friend / boss. One of the things he did is post a poll. It said, "Is it time to create a new political party in America that actually represents the 80% in the middle?" 80% have said yes, 19% have said no, and about nearly 5 million people have voted.
Well, yeah, but that's like Elon doing the whistle out to, because if you're on X, you can pretty much guess who's going to wind up voting in these things, right? So he's calling out to his followers, yeah, absolutely, follow me, do that. Now, would Elon actually start a third party between the Republicans and the Democrats? That's a big ask beyond social media. That's a big ask even behind having deep pockets. You got to have organization. You got to have the attention span, to be honest with you, to stick with that while you're trying to keep Tesla from flatlining, while you're trying to make it to Mars. I think what you put your finger on, Maddie, is that it doesn't give people space to work through where their position is, right? You're immediately being challenged, both by Trump and by Musk, which is choose now, choose now, choose now. Now, when you talk about serious issues beyond the egos, when you talk about serious issues such as economic policy, when you talk about taxes, when you talk about healthcare, which is at the center of this bill because Trump wants to gut it, when you talk about, let's just think about defense spending, right? You have to be able to step back and work through what it all means. And there's absolutely no time, right? There's that choose now syndrome. And it's a choose now syndrome, which is not just amongst politicians and activists. The media reinforces it because they want the headlines of making people choose. So the point I'm making here is even there is a real issue here about the US system and how it functions, right? When you and I could spend almost an hour discussing two guys who effectively just simply went into alpha male mode and didn't realize how to step back from it, instead of the fact that there's a lot more than those two guys who are trying to get some type of sensible hold on where we go next in the United States, where the system is very, very badly bent and at risk of breaking.
Scott, we have to end on the big tweet, the number one tweet that Elon Musk wrote. Now, he wrote this last night. He said, "Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason why they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT." Donald John Trump. What?
because you again, you know what, like, your mom sucks, your dad sucks, so do your grandparents, they suck too. Guess what I caught you doing? Guess what I caught you doing? Blah blah. And that's exactly what went off. And Elon says he knows if he uses the word Epstein, you know what it all brings up. Now, and everybody knows that Donald Trump hung out with Jeffrey Epstein. The receipts are out there in terms of the photos.
Wouldn't that have already come out, Scott? We already had a drop of names in January last year. Wouldn't we know? Trump wasn't even the president. Biden could have even leaked that. How likely is it that this is even true?
It's probably not, because again, and for all you Trump guys out there who are going to comment on your on this video, I'm going to come to his defense here, and that is that Donald Trump broke from Epstein, according to several witnesses, around 2007. Epstein was not welcome at Mar-a-Lago because of some of his behavior, right? Which went too far even for Donald Trump, which tells you how extreme it must have been, right? So, and the point about the Epstein files is that, from what we know already that's come out on Epstein, there's nothing there that ties Trump into Epstein's, the worst of Epstein's activities. But if you're Elon Musk, but what about the files who still haven't been released? What about the files who still haven't been released? Because there are.
He knows that draws us in. He knows it.
Absolutely, it draws everybody in. Look, we are back to two reality TV stars. One of whom's in the White House, one of whom has a lot of money. And they got to keep the show going, right? If they don't keep the show going, they might lose followers, they might lose traction. But to keep the show going, they don't do it with facts, they don't do it with reasoned discussion, they do it with provocation, right? And I'm going to leave you let's leave it with this. Who's the adult in the room who steps up and tells them to stop it? Friedrich Merz couldn't do it yesterday as the German chancellor because Trump would have gotten upset. But let me just walk through in just 60 seconds what everybody missed while Trump and Musk sat there. Friedrich Merz had gone in there to talk to Trump, and his team were talking to Trump's people about tariffs, about NATO, about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Merz was there to try to bring the U.S. into supporting Ukraine's resistance against Russia with all the events that have been happening there in the past week, including Ukraine's dramatic strikes that knocked out a good chunk of Russia's air force. Now, Merz doesn't jump in and pull Trump and Musk back because if he does, he loses ground on all those serious issues because Trump will get upset. So who's the adult in the room that pulls this back, not only for the sake of the US, but for the sake of Ukraine, for the sake of Europe, and indeed for the sake of a lot more folks around the world? Who's it going to be? Yeah, well, I'm offering myself, but I don't think either.
Yeah, we need to fly you over to Washington. Okay, Scott, we've just got to end on this. The Independent is reporting that Donald Trump and Elon Musk will speak today following their split. What's left to even be said, and do you think this relationship is salvageable?
Yeah, at this point, I'm going to go to Taylor Swift songs, right, and start to think about it,
We are never getting back together.
that would be the one that I'm thinking about. Is they're not getting, and it's going to be, they'll have the call, and then what we have to do is we have to say, okay, how quickly does Trump get on social media? How quickly does Elon get on Ask? Then you'll get the readouts. So Trump's staff will put out something, Elon's people will put out something, and you'll have to almost decode it. So I have no clue which way this could go. I think there are people around Musk, because you did mention that Tesla's stock plummeted 15% yesterday. It recovered 5% this morning with news that they're going to talk. I think there are people around Musk and people in the White House who want to diffuse this. But you ever try to pull two guys apart in the bar who are swinging at each other, even if they aren't in the best physical shape to do so? I'm not sure you can get them to stop it.
Scott Lucas, thank you so much for joining the Trump Report today.
Maddie, it's always a pleasure. Let's hope we can stay sane.